Did you know that the world map is like a cat playing with Australia? Australia, with an area of about 7.6 million square kilometers, is known as one of the largest countries in the world. This area is equal to 5% of the total land area. This area is very large and is equivalent to about 76 times the area of England. Of all the continents in the world, Australia may be the smallest in terms of population, but it is also the only continent that is completely controlled by one country. But few people really understand the sheer scale of how sparsely populated in the continent of Australia really is. Australia is comparable in size to the 48 states of the United States, which have a population of over 300 million people, while Australia has a population of just over 26 million people. This means that there are two American states that have more population than the entire continent of Australia, namely California with over 39 million people and Texas with over 28 million people. Regardless, it is more than twice the population of Australia. Australia's most urbanized cities are concentrated in relatively small areas that make up only 0.22% of Australia's total area, and half of the total population lives in these red areas alone. In total, about 85% of all Australians live within 50 kilometers of the coastline, meaning there are few deep in the continent's vast interior. Now we will look at the population and area of some of the largest states in Australia. Queensland has 5 million people and its area is 1.8 million square kilometers. The state of Northern Australia has a population of 246,000 people and its area is 1.42 million square kilometers. Western Australia has a population of 2.8 million people and an area of 2.5 million square kilometers. Australia is by far the driest inhabited continent on Earth, with the lowest average annual rainfall. As a result, 35% of the total area of Australia is made up of deserts. The annual rainfall is over 1,800 millimeters, which is almost 3 times that of London. As an old continent, after early humans arrived, Australia remained virtually undisturbed by any other group of humans from anywhere in the outside world from tens of thousands of years as sea levels began to rise. After the end of the last ice age, the land bridge between New Guinea and Australia sank beneath the waves about 10,000 years ago, making Australia even more remote and even less likely to be visited by outsiders. 9,600 years later, before the arrival of Europeans, the Australian continent may have been significantly visited and influenced by foreign humans, the first animals being the dingo, an invasive species of the dog that probably originated in New Guinea. Australia about 8,300 years ago, potentially by an unknown group of human visitors coming from the island. About 11 modern Australian Aboriginal DNA also originated from Americans. 1606, a Dutchman and his crew suddenly disembarked from their ships and landed on the western side of Cape York Peninsula. That the Dutch have never really taken the trouble to make permanent settlements on this continent, because the parts they have found are generally uninhabitable. 75 survivors of the ship miraculously reached the shore. 7 of them went to Jakarta. They were dispatched as one of the ship's lifeboats to make the 1,400-mile journey to Batavia, or present-day Jakarta. After a grueling 41 days, the crew finally reached Batavia and raised the alarm for the 68 crew and passengers they left behind in Australia, and over the next several years, numerous search and rescue missions by the Dutch Navy all over the west coast of Australia done. Not a single trace of the wreck was discovered, and the 68 survivors who remained were never found or heard of their ultimate fate, which remains a mystery to this day. They simply disappeared into the vast void of Australia and history. The search continued until finally, in 1963, the remains of the wreck were discovered by a team of Australian divers about 100 kilometers north of present-day Perth, more than a century after it disappeared. Britain eventually established the first permanent European settlement in Australia in 1788. On the other side of the continent, around present-day Sydney, with about 1,300 people at a time when the continent's indigenous population was probably not of Australian origin. This is until the date of 1906. It was more than the population of the United States, which finally surpassed the population of the United States in 1788. And by 1906, the population of the United States was already 90 million more than the population of Australia. The population of the British Isles immigrated to Australia during the late 1850s, more than doubling Australia's population almost overnight. Australia then struggled to attract large numbers of migrants from Europe, as it competed fiercely for them with more attractive countries. Did America continent like the United States, Canada, Brazil, and Argentina, which were geographically much closer to Europe, and therefore European migration to Europe was usually cheaper and faster, did not help that. Beginning in 1901, the Australian government instituted a policy that artificially reduced the number of refugees. The White Australian Apartheid policy, which restricted immigration to white Europeans and initially favored immigrants coming specifically from Britain, resulted in the influx of immigrants to the continent remaining only a small group of people. It was not until 1973, almost 3 decades after the end of the World War II, that the White Australia policy was finally abolished, and the arrival of the black race to the continent was an important factor in the continent's immigration policy. Since becoming a country, Australia has maintained an official policy of multiculturalism and for decades has welcomed large-scale, multi-ethnic immigration from around the world. And now in the 21st century, the vast majority of new immigrants, they come from Asia and not from Europe, especially from China and India. Today, Australia limits the number of new immigrants to the continent to less than 200,000 people per year, which is a very high rate of immigration for a country of only 26 million people. Because in 2022, almost 1 of the 3 people on the Australian continent will be in. He was born outside these continents. So we came to the conclusion that in Australia, because there is a lot of empty space and 95% of the area of Australia is uninhabited, there is more space for agriculture and livestock grazing. Don't miss the second part of this video that will be released in September. Thanks for watching.